The Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
that was a rough one, man. But it's interesting how Francis has bounced back. Francis is just nuking
Yeah.
everybody now.
It's just that mental hump
Yeah,
that he
he
got
had
stuck on, right?
He had to go through that one fight. You know?
The thing is, sometimes we get these fighters coming into the UFC, and they're so talented that they're in the UFC fairly early in their career before they've had any real lessons, especially if they've just starched a bunch of guys. Like if they come in at 10 fights into their career and they've knocked everyone out in the first round. There's no real learning process there because they've not found anyone to challenge them. So then they get into the UFC, and then we get to see them go through that process in the UFC. And I think that's what we've seen with Ngannou. It took him getting to a world title for someone to really show him something in his game that made him feel vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we've watched him go through that process. In the moment, it's really annoying because we want to see a mad fight. But in hindsight, you can kind of look at it and go, well, I appreciate that as part of his journey now. And, I understand where he was at.
You got to give Stipe credit for taking fucking bombs in that fight. I mean, he took bombs in that fight, especially in that first round. I'm like, fuck. Francis is always in it when he's standing in front of you. When he's standing in front of you, he's always in it. But Stipe managed to just slide away from most of them. The ones he got hit with, he went with them, rolled with them. The ones he got hit clean with, he just absorbed and kept going and ground him out.
So here's a question for you then. Do you think you take punches better if you expect the person to punch hard?
Probably.
Because I would say that he took bigger punches from Ngannou in that fight than the punch from DC. And I would say he was probably more vulnerable to the punch from DC because he probably wasn't expecting DC to knock him out.
Could be. Wouldn't expect to get caught like that in the clinch either. It was a really perfect utilization of the clinch work combined with that crazy big overhand right.
Yeah.
I mean, he really set him up perfectly for that. And it was something that obviously was a part of his repertoire. It was not something that was just, it was just happened to be there for the moment. He set him up for that. And that was just the perfect right hand. And he caught him when he was looking. I mean, he just didn't know that punch was coming, clipped him, dropped him, put him away. The real question is, what's it going to be like now that he knows that DC can knock him out? I mean, is he going to fight from the outside, try to land big shots? He's going to avoid the clinch at any cost now. He's got a big height and reach advantage. Can he keep DC off of him?
Yeah.
And then also, when a fighter has had a lot of wars, like him with Junior Dos Santos, the first fight, it was a war, right? I mean, he's had some wars in his career.
Struve fight.
The Ngannou fight, the Struve fight was a war. He got stopped in that fight.
Yeah.
How many, the Mark Hunt fight, right? That was a war.
Yeah. But, I mean,
Wars.
he dominated that
Right.
one from top position as well.
And even the Alistair Overeem fight, I mean, that first round was
Got
chaos. It was chaos until he wound up stopping him. How many of those can a fighter have? How many of those can a fighter have before we see them start to fade in front of our eyes? And I'm not suggesting that we saw that with him because he was able to withstand the scariest fucking heavyweight striker in the sport. And I think the DC punch was just a punch he didn't see, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
And it just put him away.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if it happens again. First round, I'd be surprised if it happens again because I think he is going to be far more respectful of the fact that DC's got power now.
For sure.
And
I think you're 100% right.
And you go back to his UFC debut, and he did fight long. He used to use a real good long jab and a low kick, and recently he's kind of crowded his work a lot. He steps in very close with that right hand, which often offered the clinch to DC.
He's just KOing so many people that I think that he's like, fuck it. I'm just going to get in there and just bombs away with these people. I mean, he makes it exciting. I think he is the least appreciated, successful heavyweight champion ever. And I don't understand it. He's got everything. He's he's a firefighter, an active duty firefighter. He's a knockout fighter. I mean, he knocked out Verdum moving backwards with a perfectly placed right hand. He's a fucking animal. I mean, he fights super exciting. He's been smashing everybody. He won more heavyweight title fights than anyone in history. He defended the title 4 fucking times. No one's been able to do that. That's how crazy that division is.
Yeah.
And still does not get the respect he deserves.
And he seems pissed off this week as well.
Good.
In his
fucking
interviews,
active duty firefighter, man. Guy's an animal.
Yeah. He seems annoyed. I wonder whether that's going to play into the fight because I got the impression from him that he'd not watched the previous fight. I got the impression that he'd not watched the first DC fight.
Really?
Yeah. So that concerns me, because then the idea of what happened in his head might be very different to what actually happened.
Well, God, do you really think they would let him not watch that?
I don't know. I mean, there are some fighters that do. It just blows my mind. And the way he was talking in an interview is like it's, you know. And the thing that concerns me more is that he was talking about how he was winning that first round. You know, he felt like he was controlling the fight. He did a lot of good things until DC caught him. So if he starts banking on that being, you know, just one of those punches that he got caught with, he might not, you know, give DC the credit for, you know, opening that vulnerability up.
Yeah, I think for sure he must have heard all the different people discuss tactics, though. It just doesn't make any sense to me that he insulates himself that well. And for sure his coaches over at Strong Style, they've definitely...
they've watched it for sure.
Watched it.
Yeah.
They understand what to watch. So maybe he relies on his coaches and their guidance of him during training. And for sure he knows that DC knocked him out. So what he's going to do is go in there and fight like he's trying to get it back. The question is he going to be able to use that long reach and that height and that power on the outside and keep DC the fuck away from him? Because he's got a considerable height and reach advantage. Can he stuff those takedowns? Can he keep DC from getting on top of him? If he can do all those things, it can get very interesting. Yeah. And if DC, you know, he's undefeated at heavyweight, man. I mean, I think that's really where he shines. You look at what he did to Josh Barnett, fucking throws him through the air like a rag doll when he was in the Strikeforce Grand Prix. Dude, he was a monster at heavyweight. You know, and the wrestling's unparalleled.
Yeah. So do we get Jones at heavyweight then?
I hope so. I do. I really do. I think he wants to do it at light heavyweight, though. I think he wants to prove a point.
What, DC wants to do it at light heavyweight?
Yes.
I don't think he wants to lose that weight again, does he? I mean,
what I had heard was that he wanted to fight at light heavyweight if he fights John for a third time. That's what I had heard. And I think I might have heard it from him.
Huh.
And but I would encourage, if I was in his camp, I'd say, fuck all this dieting, bro. Like, look at you. You know, when you have a belly, you fuck people up. You know, and he doesn't worry about food. He doesn't worry about cutting weight. He's fast for a heavyweight, much like Andy Ruiz. You know, I think there's a benefit in that. Obviously, there's people that knew that Andy Ruiz was a really talented boxer coming in, but there's other people that looked at his body and dismissed him. But when you see the efficiency of those punches, and the fact that he's able to uncork so many punches in close, whereas Anthony Joshua with his giant arms and his long length gets a little bit smothered by that closer distance, and Andy's just dropping bombs on him over the top, and big power to him too, man. And perfect mechanics, like so fluid. Everything's just smooth and fluid. Who fuck knows, man? Maybe DC's the best heavyweight of all time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, quite possibly. And there's something to be said for that physique as well. There's an efficiency that comes with that. You know, like you look at Anthony Joshua and he looks like a physical specimen, but the drawbacks would be obvious over rounds. Whereas, Andy Ruiz, DC, they can just, they just keep flowing. And it's, those punches are more about the momentum. You know, you need a certain amount of muscle mass to get the movement started, and then you maintain it with good technique. You know, like an additional amount of muscle is not going to make up for a heavier punch, really. Right.
And he's talked openly about being far stronger in training as a heavyweight than he was as a light heavyweight. He just felt better. Yeah. I think it's his weight class. I really do. I think look, he beat the greatest of all time. I mean, the greatest on paper of all time, at least on paper. I feel like performance-wise, there was moments where Cain Velasquez was in his prime where I said, that's the motherfucker. That, to me, I know it doesn't play out on paper because he was injured multiple times and had a gang of surgeries, but when he was in his prime, man, he was terrifying. He just didn't stop. He had welterweight Colby Covington-style endurance as a fucking heavyweight, man. He didn't make any sense.
And he's slightly bigger than DC everywhere, isn't he? Like reach and height and everything.
Yeah. And, and he could fuck you up on the feet, too. He could do everything. He was so efficient and smooth and just relentless.
Yeah.
No one more relentless than Cain Velasquez in his prime. For him, it was almost like his body couldn't handle the strength of his brain. Like his mental toughness was so incredible.
His body just couldn't keep up with it.
His body just starts blowing things up because his mind's just pressed forward, go, go, go. His cardio was just preposterous. Didn't even make sense.
Yeah, DC looks in good shape at the open workouts yesterday. Yeah. I think he's expecting a harder fight this weekend.